Hey everybody, this is episode 2 of the Roc-Cast. Today we're going to be going over the challenges of large-scale artificial rock projects. Both Sean and I have been on completely different large-scale projects, a combined experience of over 30 years, so we feel like we've seen a fair amount. We're not saying that we've done the largest artificial rock projects in the world, but I think that we have a pretty good idea of some of the challenges that we've come across. So I want to chat with you about not necessarily volume or quality, like there is going to be a difference. I know the largest project we ever did for Rockscapes was 77,000 square feet at the casino, the Club Region Casino. And I think the next biggest would have been Casino Rama, which was the first major project you were ever on.
Yep.
And so I would love to talk to you just about the sheer scale of organizing, because that site sprawled over the course of like 40 or 50 acres, 2 different buildings, 2 different parking lots. And I would love to hear what you experienced. You weren't a foreman at that time, you were one of the artists, is that correct?
No, I was just basically like a fresh new grunt. I was just a helper at that point.
Okay.
You know, I don't even think I had my forklift license at that point. So yeah, I was just taking it all in. It was a different experience, but I think I got most of my experience on that job because it spanned over the time of about 2 years of my early adult life. So when we first got there, the casino didn't even have like power properly set up. We had no machinery. I remember our first week there, we had sprayed rock panels and we had shipped them up there. We brought them up, and there was a point, that was when we were still doing panels that were 10 feet by 20 feet.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Like the full-size granite panels.
Before we cut some of those panels.
Before we cut. And I don't think we cut any of the granite panels really, but we've cut the limestone to be more like 6 by 8, right? So we had no power, we had no machinery at that stage that could bring the panels in. So I do specifically remember the whole crew, like each picking a piece of panel, and we all like carried the one major panel in, because it was so
no carts,
tight.
You literally... We
had no carts, nothing big enough that made sense for that. And if you go into that back entrance of the casino, by the, I think it's the Legends Cafe, where we also did that the tree.
So sorry, there's no context for anybody. So there is a casino part, which there was rock all the way around, plus a front entrance, indoor waterfall, an exterior waterfall for the casino. Then there was a stream for a restaurant.
Yeah, as you go into, there's a point where like the casino... Well, anybody that's been up there knows there's that central spot where you can go buy your tickets for the live shows. Yeah. And then there's those big trees that have the holograms of like the elders' faces that tell you like stories about their past. Yeah. And then you continue on towards the hotel, and as you start to enter the hotel, you go down the big long hallway where, if I remember correctly, there's like there's a few restaurants, but there's some like conference rooms and stuff that you can rent out. And then you get to, was it Weir's restaurant? Yeah. And that's where the limestone / granite, you know, combined panels start. And then like there's like this sort of sheet waterfall inside the restaurant that curves around and acts as its own border, and it's like a channel stream system that goes all the way down to a bridge, and the bridge is like where the host stand is, that leads out to a larger pond which had that large 24-foot water feature right in the main lobby. Yeah, that was by the elevator. Yeah, hugs the elevator as you go up. And I loved that part because there's like a reveal. So when you're in the lobby, each pillar that they have there for the big sort of, I guess you would call it a great room, But each one has a bunch of granite stones clad around the base, and then like what greets you as you walk in through the hotel is a large outcropping as well. And as you go up the elevator, if you look down, there's a large central round carpet, and you look down over it, and it is a turtle. Like, it looks like a turtle.
Combining the mythologies of our native population.
Yeah, like all the symbolism is very heavy, and they love it. Maybe even a little bit more than some other cultures. And then outside we have a huge, one of our probably the eye-catching ones for most people on our social medias, but that huge water feature that is on both sides. It's a 360 water feature with a large pump room. And then inside again, when you go up to the spa in the resort, in the hotel, there's a large sun deck with a huge, I'm going to say 60-foot wall by, how high was that? At least 20.
Had to be 20, yeah.
At least 20 odd feet high.
And side walls for planters.
In around the spa, like the spa in there had it clad. And we had to make all those panels on site, so we had taken our molds into that pool before the pool was done, and we sprayed all of our molds in the pool. And then
so were you distributed in multiple crews, or did you start in one spot and then work your way across, or was it phases?
Definite phases, and there was just periods where, like any job site, they're not ready for you in one section, but they might be ready for you at another section. So we definitely bounced around quite a bit, and it was multiple season too. So obviously, when the sun was out, we were able to work on the front features, and when we were able to hit each section inside, we were hitting each section inside. So I remember being.
So you did one at a time inside, casino first or hotel first?
If I remember correctly, it was the casino first.
Okay.
I remember the hotel being very cold for most of it. When we did, it wasn't, there was no fineries in there yet. It was basically a full work site. Yeah. And, we had...
It's got to be 60-foot ceilings when you go into there, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, quite large. So, a lot of challenges. Luckily, it wasn't up to me to figure out where we needed to be at what time, but I do remember... there was the hurry up over here, and then you gotta wait, and then hurry up over there, and then you gotta wait. Okay, come back over here and finish this. There's this point where you get almost 70 to 80% complete in one area, and then you have to leave, and then you're kind of trying to wrap everything all at once at the end, which almost takes longer. And
so from there you went to your first pretty large scale job. I actually have a video of it, the Best Western Lamplighter. Am I right on that?
That was my first project on,
so that was also a giant site, slightly smaller, but that had a massive waterfall that went 2 stories down, a koi pond, a huge mountain that had a pool within it, a water slide wrapped through it. So take us through the difference of being a grunt all the way to foreman, and having to actually come up with your own strategy for that project.
That was one of those situations where I probably shouldn't have run that job.
Your family, so you had to.
I had to, and even worse, all the main crew that really knew what they were doing were still on Rama and other projects, so...
Oh, there was overlap on those.
There was a lot of overlap.
I know that.
Yeah, so I didn't run any of the senior guys. I ran a whole new crew that I made up largely of my friends.
Gotcha.
Which was a terrible idea.
I've worked with friends.
We definitely lost. I lost all of my friends on that one. And yet somehow we got it done. Somehow that thing is still standing and looking great. I think it's if you pick up the basic principles from the larger scale jobs and then the sort of steps of each stage, it comes together. Because we use engineered drawings and apply it to every single job, whether we have each structure specifically engineered, the principles carry us through from job to job to job, right? So that's what we just followed. We followed the basics using beautiful panels, and we had great machinery, we had everything we needed, and somehow we got it done.
honestly for me, the large scale, the coordination effort, like you mentioned, jumping back and forth, the first time I ever had to really go up against that was Wonderland, which was like a white whale for us. We wanted to work with them for 35 years before we finally got that contract. And it was the coordinating and me understanding almost like assertiveness of like, no, it's my time. Because I jumped so much that we ended up losing steam. We were out of schedule for a while, ended up having to work weekends to catch up. And the whole time was because a different crew would come in and be like, well, I need to be here now. And I would stop everything and move. Versus, because on a smaller scale job, it's not even that big of a deal. You're practically done before another trade needs to come in. The coordinating is just a totally different level. And I didn't have, and the project itself was right during COVID. So there was like a weird confusion of like two trades weren't even allowed to work next to each other. And we had to keep moving and shifting. And that left, like you said, like 70%. I was at like 60% before I had to move. And then I'd be at 50%, I'd have to move. You would be in the middle of a spray day and they'd be like, next day you can't. You can't be here. I have to move over to the front of the wall or the back. It was, for me, that was the most jarring from going to a small site to a large site. And I guess the bigger one, like you would have had 100 times the trades compared to that wall in either the Lamplighter or the casino.
Yeah, Lamplighter wasn't so bad because the brunt of the work that had to be done first was inside the rooms and the atrium that they made over the Lamplighter, because that was a courtyard at first. Yeah. So they completely made that like a giant greenhouse. So we had completed like, I'd say most of it before some of the finishes started happening, which is always that good and bad for us. Like, we like to be messy at first, but then at the end of the day, we are like finishers. So when we get to that finish section, you obviously want to finish up to something. Yeah, so that takes the coordination there. And sometimes you have to move. Sometimes you have to not move, but it only works to move if you got something else to do. Right? And then, always there's somebody...
Still set up, the takedown, set up, takedown, that
yeah, it makes no sense. Yeah. If it doesn't make any sense, like, it's just somebody else has got to figure it out. Like, it's just, I don't know. I guess I never really had an issue with...
Some people screw up.
Yeah, I never really had that issue. I'm probably better at it than I was. I remember when I was younger, like, there was times like at Science North where I just didn't get along with certain trades, especially electricians. They just, it just didn't work, and the coordination and their arrogance on that site was just terrible. So, but
family that are electricians, but I had the same issue at Wonderland, is that we would protect giant sections, and we were painting and spraying two different areas because one area was done. And the painter was on the back side of the wall, and then we'd come around the corner and all of her protection was gone, so everything was coated in paint, and she would spend the whole time fixing it back up and then go back over, and the electrician, I guess, was jumping back and forth and would rip it all down again, and she could paint everywhere. Yeah. And then we would get a call being like, how did you ruin everything with paint? And so we had a little bit of butting heads with,
in my 20s. That's like, so you want to fight?
It doesn't work on the larger scale job. I will say the biggest job I had ever been on, technically it wasn't my site. We did some repairs inside Wonder Mountain, and I remember the first time that I was brought as a tour to go and find it, was completely lost. Like, that place is giant. At one point, they had planned on having Wonder Mountain as a shopping mall, like a giant shopping center that they wanted to take on, like the Eaton Center or Edmonton Mall. Like, they were absolutely huge, and some staircases just went to locked doors or nothing. I remember trying to get up onto the roof, and it just like ended. And there was just like a big wide hole, and then there's just raccoons and scary Halloween equipment that's stored in there. that was the biggest place. And we had 20 different places we had to go and repair, and coordinating us to go from place to place in small, tiny patches and jobs was a nightmare. And we had to bring power with us and light with us everywhere because there was no internal lighting.
I always pictured they could do something like that in there. Like, remember the old the Vegas casino, like the Luxor, where like down in the, you'd be walking around, they had like their own shopping centers and shops, but then you'd look up and it was like the inside of the pyramid. Yeah. So I always thought it could be like that, where you're like looking up inside inside a massive cavern or cave. Like they wouldn't need to necessarily box it all in.
Oh, there would be so many opportunities for them to turn it into like shops, or like even in the side of the mountains, because they have, I think, 3 rides inside the mountain. But there's a ton of real estate where it's not even touched. They could build subfloors, staircases, escalators. It would just be an absolute Herculean effort to ever convert that part. That was done before even Roc-Scapes existed, I think in '81. So it was built in a different style. It didn't have like fiber reinforced cement, and it was just shot onto lath and tied rebar with nothing on the backside. So like a lot of that rebar, the places that we repaired or reshot, the rebar was just falling off the walls. So like we had to fix all that, shoot it in, and I'm sure that's going to be a continuous effort. Not to spoil Wonderland secrets, but
are you allowed to say that?
I don't know. But then, so what would be the next largest job that you would have had any type of unique challenge? Would you consider any of our residentials a large scale when you compare them to some of our commercials? Yeah,
I would say when we were out in Grand Valley, that was pretty big. We didn't have to coordinate much. That was mostly us.
Yeah. Just a pool. We worked with Hollandia Pools on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that Science North obviously was a big one.
Yeah.
And
6-7 months we were there.
6-7 months, and you're kind of like, the thing is an open, like the 2 floors there where we did the habitats and like the interactive areas and the terrariums and aquariums. Like the upper floor was open to the public, so you know, you were working in the area where the public could watch you, and you know, like
no swearing,
trying not to create dust. And I love swearing. I love swearing a lot. That was a tricky one, and again, I think that one, like the hotel we stayed in too, like had like 1 plug outside, so all the trades would like race back to the hotel to plug in their trucks, so that nobody would get stuck in the morning. Because it was getting to like the negative 40s.
I had a Red Bull in my trunk at the Toyota Yaris there, and I opened it up and I was like, no, I gotta have it everywhere, and that thing didn't freeze -40, so I stopped.
Definitely not put that in your body.
No. I stopped for a couple of years of drinking that after that happened. But the largest residential, I feel like that there's a couple that, honestly, we haven't done too many small scale residentials if you think about it. But there's like 4 that come to mind that would be like the one up in New Wiskard. I don't think we're allowed to use names, but I mean that would have been a very,
it was Grant Forest Products.
Yeah, it was their office, right?
It was, so we did their office, and we did his cottage area too. Yeah. So that one would have been, that had quite a few trades, a lot of stonemasons. Yeah. The electricians, the interiors were all being done at the same time, and we were the front entrance, so we were right in the middle of everybody in their way at all times. Yeah. There was there was definitely some tension after a certain amount of time, and you could just tell things were just getting, like the job was dragging on a little too long. They kept adding the worker guys, like there was like this sense up there that they were like, this is their cash cow, they want to keep it going as long as they could, so that they could have the work as long as they could. Yeah. And I think they personally, like, you know, made it a little bit slower. That might be a leap, but it just seemed by like talking up there, like it was really hard to get things going. I still have such great memories there because you're right on the water. Haileybury was such a beautiful little sort of cottagey style, you know, getaway town.
feel like you moved from a city into Huntsville after that, right? Like where you felt like the need to get out of.
Yeah, I was in Toronto.
Yeah.
I was at Victoria Park in Danforth, like right on the line there, and I was like, I got to get out of the city. And then I went to Huntsville. I was like, that was a over
a little bit too much.
Yeah, we went too far.
I do love Huntsville though.
Yeah, it was beautiful, but it's hard to work up there.
Yeah. So have you ever, on a large scale project, so for me, one of the things is I haven't had the opportunity where on a large scale project that they're like, you have unlimited room for material. So say the zoo would have been the most recent large scale project. That was the orangutan habitat, 10,000 square feet habitat that was mostly retaining walls and some inner workings and stream and waterfall. But that would have been the most open that I was allowed to have materials. So there would be some times where we would actually run out because of the space allotted. I would say that was one of the biggest challenges for that. Same with Wonderland. I was allowed 0 room. Like this room feels like as much. I was only able to bring in like 10 panels at a time, which obviously slowed things down. Have you ever had the point where you literally ran out of materials on a larger scale project?
I can't remember anything specifically because we would, like on those really big projects, you're not even shipping anything from the shop like sometimes we do. Like, you're just shipping it right to site.
Yeah, direct from the manufacturer.
Yeah, and they would just sort of set it up. The Haileybury one, you know, they had 2 tiers of sections. There was like this upper service road, and that's where we had all of our panels and all of our concrete. Mm-hmm. So, you know, as long as and we weren't supposed to drive any of the machinery. Mm-hmm. They had a guy that would just drive the machinery all day. So you'd just say, hey man, I need this, and that, you know, and he would bring it down for you. Mm. But, you know, we also worked through winter in that one.
Tenting.
And the tenting did nothing because it, you know, -40. Yeah. Like I remember I was mixing concrete and I had a barrel heater. I had the flame like barbecue and like the water's kind of boiling, but like I'm banging ice off of my Carhartts. Yeah. And we had one poor guy that didn't know how to hook the hose together, and I yelled at him a lot. But yeah, it was as much. There's always a yin and yang on those projects. Is like, you know, forcing yourself to work through those conditions, and it's much nicer when it's all like summer weather and you know.
So do you prefer the large scale project where it could last like up to 2 years, or do you like the one month, 2 month project, even 1 week project where you can get in and out, or do you have like a preference?
I don't know that I have a preference. I think that the smaller jobs help the bigger jobs. Because as we've seen, you know, like there's a different mindset where you're switching gears with the smaller projects. Because the smaller projects, you are like, we can get all this done today, tomorrow, or the next day. And the larger projects, it's like, okay, we'll get that tomorrow. And if you say we'll get that tomorrow too many times, you know, like it starts to push a project back. Yeah. So I think it's very handy to have the smaller projects to sort of switch it up and to reset you there. And I think they only benefit the large projects that much more because of it. From our standpoint,
they expedite your feeling on like, okay, we need to be set up and going today, rather than on the large projects. It's like the first couple days you're just getting everything there and setting up. Yeah. And you almost feel like if you got your material there for that day, well, that was enough for the day. I know we had many guys that was their whole.
Yeah, we've had crews where you can get you could be set up for mixing in an hour, and we've had crews like last year where we were just like, here's 2 days to please set up. Yeah, exactly. If you can, I got other stuff to do. If you can have it set up by I need this Wednesday.
Yeah, and they would take that time.
And they would take that time, and they still wouldn't be ready.
I do think that it's harder the larger scale project when you have more than one crew or 3 or 4 at a time. Where you're setting them up at different stages, can get a little bit tricky to make sure to motivate each to keep up. And like I'm always trying to tell people, because it's done in stages, like you got the steel, then your lath, then your fiber coat, finish coat, and then paint. I'm like, this is a race, and you need to stay ahead. And if they catch you, you've lost. had only worked for so long. Like that
only works for certain motivated people, right?
Yeah.
Like I would say this crew now that we have is you know, an exciting crew to have.
Mm-hmm.
And it does feel like I told you the other day when we were out on project, you know, we're just leapfrogging each other and not even like having to communicate.
Yeah.
Which took a long time, but it's a great place to be at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And even so, like the other guys on the crew that are a bit newer, like they're starting to see that, and then you're sort of seeing the small ways where they're trying to pick up on it.
Yeah, I'll say
there's some people that won't do that, and you know that makes it really hard and slows down the whole crew. So you know, it's like you know, everybody does sort of work for each other in the sense that nobody wants to waste each other's time, which is nice.
Yeah, I will say our artists now feels like the first time in a long time where we've had somebody that we're like, I don't really need to double check your work. Like he likes the reinforcement. He likes the feedback and back and forth, and I enjoy that too. Where I like being able to have somebody that Mom would do with me, where it would be like, all right, so what would you change? What do you like? What do you don't like? What could be more efficient? And she would do that with me even before I was allowed to do finish. And I love the fact that I finally, outside of family, have that opportunity with somebody. Because I don't think, other than, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but since like Jeff, that we had somebody else that would actually care enough to have a back and forth. Not necessarily care enough, that's the wrong wording, but like have that that trust in each other's opinion, and without the ego getting in the way. I would say that's been a long time.
Yeah, I don't think Jeff really. He obviously he was my direct foreman, so he taught me a lot. But you know, it took a while for us to get to there, because like, you know, back then you don't have these people that naturally just want to be teachers, right? Like it's more like a, you know, prove you deserve to be here kind of mentality.
Yes, it is a totally different.
And then once you break through that ceiling, then things open up for you. And
that was like suffer long enough that I trust that you're not going to run away when things get hard.
Yeah, like I mostly avoided the art side of it, even though I had a knack for it. But I was just like, I used to get cringy when people would call them the artists, and like the artists back then loved it. Like they would just stop and talk to whoever that would listen to them.
It's part of my pitch is that we're artists.
I know, but it used to just like the way that like the guys that did it like back then, they kind of ruined it for me, because they'd be like, oh yeah, you like my art, and they would talk about themselves like the whole time, and I'm just like,
they were the star versus the work.
They wanted to be the star, yeah. So I resisted for a long time, but eventually, you know, like over the years, there's just nobody else to do it, and then you know, you need somebody like Jeff that's be like, suck it up.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. You do it. And then he would help me through it, but he didn't need to help me too much. He definitely helped me with the stamping and letting the stamp do the work. That was definitely a him thing, which I just understood a lot better. Whereas Dad, like, you know, he would like to freehand carve stuff, a little bit more similar to what you'll see in the States, where they like outright just completely block everything out with the carving and don't even use stamps.
There are some exceptional...
They do great, but it's not the way that I would do it, right?
No.
And it's also harder to teach because, you know,
I think that work depends on like how you're feeling that day, because like you could see an exceptional artist and then like a patch, you're like, oh, they didn't have their coffee yet, or... But honestly, like we're part of maybe 5 or 6 artificial rock groups on Facebook, and when I look at some of their work, I'm like, you're exceptional. And I am starting to see more and more stamps come out, and people start to customize their tools compared to back in the day. I remember the first time I went to the World of Concrete, I finally got to meet new artificial rock artists, and they were so like internalized, where that artist mentality of like, oh no, I'm like deep and brooding over here, and I'm on my own, and we have nothing to share or talk about. Whereas now those groups, everybody loves to share their work, comment on the work, encourage work, and I think finally learn from each other. Like I think our father's generation was like, everybody keep their secret, and then those secrets die with us so that nobody could ever be as good. And I think it was bad for the industry. Whereas I think I'm seeing more and more like exceptional artists come out, which is kind of nice to see. Like there's 2 in BC that are fantastic, and then probably like at least a dozen companies in the States that I would call exceptional for the first time.
Yeah, to me, I think for us, because we use so much panels, I would just say that, you know, success is, you know, once it's painted, nobody can see where you did it. Yeah. Like, nobody can see where I carved. Yeah. Because it just blends away with the panel. And that's the idea, is I'm not trying to stand out. I'm trying to blend away. Yeah. Right?
On a large-scale project, that's, like, the most important. Because if all of a sudden you were able to pick out
the seams,
every single panel... I remember that was actually one of the first challenges, I think it was at the zoo. And Dad and I were walking around, and he's like, all right, can you pick out each of the panels? And at first, there was no chance. And then as I got older and better at it, I could recognize the individual panel, the sizing. Even if it was cut up into a half dozen pieces, I was able to figure it out now.
But you can go to our early days, like the large-scale project, like the Wilderness Ride at Ontario Place, and you can pick out a lot of the seams.
Yeah.
And back then, they were doing it like the way that... yeah, I think you still see it in China, where they would like stick bolts with like large washers right through the panel to hold them up on the wall with threaded rod. Yeah. And like all of those popped off, like or not them, but like the cement, like that they just covered the bolts with. Yeah. So then those are seams, you know, and they're like there's like round pockets everywhere that we had to go back and fix. I think you guys years ago we back sprayed everything as well.
Yeah, because that was GRC, so it was a totally different product than we use today. We use polymesh or polypropylene fiber reinforced mix. But yeah, we literally had to go back and back spray the whole thing because we bought a system initially and utilized that system for all of that in West Edmonton Mall. West Edmonton Mall was all backfilled, so it didn't matter. Those were 2 giant projects at GFRC that failed because Fortron didn't actually come into existence at that point. Yeah.
So leaps and bounds since then. But that doesn't mean there's not like lessons to learn on those ones. And for the large scale projects, I just think you know, we talk all the time. Like the thing with the zoo was the thing that's always hard with the zoo is that when we're doing the large scale projects there, is that because they have to go out for tender, they have to use language, like we have to do it a way that makes it so other people could bid on it, like against us. Yeah. And usually that's like the shotcreting, like blow and go style, whereas, you know,
they're not even looking for an exceptional artist. They're literally looking for mass work.
But as I told, you know, one of the new project managers recently, is like, if you look at that project specifically and how, you know, we had to go through winter again. Like, we could have easily made panels in the shop. We could have easily, you know, put the panels up in the winter and then did the seams in the spring.
You could even lap them in the winter.
It's like, you could lap them in the winter, but you wouldn't even have to do the cement work, and we would have been 90% done. The quality would have been better, and like the amount of labor savings, which is the biggest killer over anything right now, and the amount of time drawn out that basically they're not making money on a feature, the animal's not in its, you know, in its
proper habitat,
which was, you know, so much better and bigger. Like that project dragged on so much longer than it needed to be. Not because of us, but, you know, like, just for our part alone, like, it would have gone, the coordination and the speed would have happened a lot quicker if we were just able to do what our product is, but, you know, you can't because other people can't match it. It's just like, I don't like that part where we're like lowering ourselves, but you know, now until we can convince everybody
that that's the way,
this is the way.
I have a question for you. Would you get excited? Say Wonderland was like, "Hey, we're tearing down Wonder Mountain and we want you to restart." Would you be terrified or excited?
Probably excited at first until we got the job.
Until you actually got the job.
Yeah, because what did they just do in Shanghai? They just did like Frozen World. Did you ever see that? Have you seen that yet? Yeah, look up that one, because they did, like, they basically built the mountain behind the castle of Frozen.
Incredible.
And it is, it's got like this whimsical, realist look, kind of like with the cartoon.
Yeah.
And so it's like animation come to life. And I kind of really like something like that, that challenge, that's something that's a little bit, that just looks phenomenal. You know, I can't speak to their building practices out there, so I don't know how long it'll last.
Well, you would have to commit parts of, like, a chunk of your life.
You'd have to move everybody, yeah.
Yeah, like, that's the part for me on the large scale projects, is, like, I really want to be excited for it, because I know I'm committing a portion of my life into that. Like, we always say, sweat, blood, and tears goes into every single project, but it's in a finite amount of time. On like a project like that, you'd be there for probably like 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah, and like that's the thing, right? Because even with the Rama project, I was there, I lived in Aurelia for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, the year away from friends and family, I lost relationships, you know, it's...
There's sacrifices.
There was big sacrifices that in your 20s, it's kind of like you're taking the time to travel anyway, so... That was where I got a lot of experience and stories, but I mean that you run out of road on that one. There's, you know, now we have young kids, we don't want to be, we don't necessarily want to be doing that, but you know, something like Shanghai, I don't know if that's the one, where was it where they asked us if we would sign like an NDA to go over?
Yeah, well, we signed an NDA.
Yeah, but anyway, that's right. Yeah, but you know, maybe it was that one. I can't remember because they wouldn't give us the details yet, right?
No, they wouldn't give us until, because we declined on that part because it was too many unknowns and we had to sign too many NDAs, and we had to provide all of our financial informations, and we're a small family company and we don't just give away our financials.
And I think the point of that is that. When we were first talking about, they asked if we would go, but then they also said if we would go over there that they basically just wanted a few project managers, you know, that we're not going to do the work, which is a very different shift from what we do, you know, here where we are, you know,
I've talked to a few American artists, and that's essentially what they seem to be doing, is going from some of the biggest rock companies from one to the next for that next large scale project, where it's not about the company and the legacy of the company, it's about the project and the artists themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, we have, I think, hit our time limit, so I just want to encourage everybody to like, comment, and follow. We saw in the first Roc-Cast, which did phenomenal, so thank you very much for tuning in, that 65% of people had not been following us that tuned in. So we really, really appreciate you coming through. And we'll chat with you on the next one.